when you remove standards, it's like, let's say you were teaching an art class and you announced that there was going to be a competition, in the next month. And one student asks, well, what's the judging standard? And the teacher said, there's no standard, right? So the moment there's no standard, right, and you reject God in this case, is the metaphor, is that you have to invent a standard. Now, the only way to be seen in a standardless um, um, art, let's say in the art show or life itself, is to be loud, to be very offensive, to, vomit on yourself. You're basically trying to cross lines because there is no standard. So the new standard is absolute debauchery, like the loudest, the most disgusting, because that's the only possible standard you can reach. It's not beauty, it's not form, it's not aesthetics. It's just the rejection of all standards is the standard. So there's a paradox and a self-contradiction there that I kind of knew that I was participating in for a little bit. I was like, okay, there's no telos, there's no higher purpose when there's no standard. And so, you see all these artists who, like the Lady Gaga, I call her Lady Dada because like Dadaism, she represents that I think it was the 1920s and on, right? This notion of upending all standards in art and form, changing everything, making it so obscure and ambiguous, right? And so structure, theology actually disambiguates a lot of this stuff that as children and as early teens and early 20s men and women, we're trying to like break down. It's stopping us from reaching our full potential, this kind of thing. And it's just so immature at this point. Now that I look back, I'm slightly embarrassed, but of course, how would I have known at that point? I wasn't surrounding myself with anyone who was objecting to it. So
yeah, and I think many of us, and I guess when I say many of us, I just mean like all young men in some way probably going through life, we get to a point where we just feel like being edgy or rejecting whatever we were taught is what's cool, and then being cool is what makes you edgy, and then suddenly you realize at some point, maybe when it is time to get more serious about life, like, oh wait, I actually just believed in nothing and was just flailing about trying to act as cool as I could in whatever way that is. But there was actually nothing there, And so I think a lot of us go through that when we get a wife or have kids or what it may be. We have to, like you said, you have to think about, would I teach my kids this? So suddenly orgies and cocaine don't seem as appealing because they in no way meet that standard.
Right. Absolutely. And even if you have a good skill, I mean, there are people who are technically amazing, whether it be music or drawing, but if they have nothing to say, their standard just becomes technical, which at least is a step up from just not having anything, right? But then you start asking questions of like, what's the basis for this stuff? What's the basis for aesthetics and beauty and goodness? And what does it mean to bring beauty into the world? And in what framework am I bringing beauty into the world? Now, this can get inverted, of course, because some people could look at like some weird pseudo blood ritual at a party as beautiful, right? And people, and they do that. And so that becomes the battle. And so you realize that the battle, at least at the early stages, when you abandon sort of this leftist, arbitrary, subjective view, right? A relativist view, you at least go toward truth. And then you start, at least I did, I abandoned ship and became sort of like a safe libertarian, classical liberal, Thomas Sowell this, Prager you that, all of the people who are there to rescue people who jump off the sinking sort of liberal democracy ship. They have the mantra of, what was it, Breitbart, who said, politics is downstream from culture. Like that really appealed to me when I left, when I just rejected the left side of things. Right. I was like, oh, there's this nice little raft, right, that I can float on where I'm not on either side. So I'm safe. You can't call me a right-leaning, whatever, white supremacist.
Yeah, I didn't drop those bombs. Had nothing to do
with
me.
I'm just right in the middle. And then, but then I started asking questions about like, well, the whole Breitbart politics is downstream from culture. You simply ask, which many don't actually, well, what's culture downstream from, right? That would be you keep asking, and then, you'll, it's not endless regress. My view, it's definitely God, but you ask what is, you could vaguely say theology or philosophy is culture is downstream from philosophy. So it's not just about a culture war. This is why I always make fun of the modern authorized right, like Ben Shapiro, because he keeps people, it's a culture war. We're doing a culture war this. And there's never he kind of flirts with Judeo-Christianity, right? But he doesn't get to the core of the arguments about it. He just kind of lets it float. It's out there. It's kind of vaguely informed, but really it's a culture war. And same with Alex Jones, like an info war. So you get sold these kind of lower form wars, which are valid in their own little context, but they're still informed. How you ought to fight and operate in these little systems are still informed by something beyond the system itself. The system doesn't tell you which is the right way. You're just saying it's a war. It's like saying you're playing a ping pong game, right? Well, it's not giving me the rules and everything and why I ought to play the ping pong game. You're just playing the ping pong game. And so I started, with people like Jay Dyer, I started questioning, well, what is the philosophy behind any of it, including pursuing science, empirical truths, philosophical truths? And then how do you engage with these deeper level questions that everybody, by the way, interacts with, like morality, right? Is such an important aspect of everything we do, because everyone is underneath it, always making a meta-ethical moral assumption, right?